Hello everyone, I'm Terry Vincent and I'm the Data Center Instructor at Micronics Training. I'd like to welcome you to our Implementing Cisco Data Center Infrastructure course. This is going to be part one of the CCNP, the Cisco Certified Network Professional track for Data Center. Now I want to spend a little bit of time talking about what DCII is. Because specifically what we're going to do is we are going to be looking at a large number of technologies. Now the good news is that there are going to be technologies that are going to relate specifically to things like the Nexus series devices. Nexus 7Ks, 5Ks, 2Ks, fabric extenders. But it is also going to mean that we're going to be looking specifically at a lot of theory. Now I like to teach this class from the perspective of implementation. So configure this, configure that. And by configuring it, my hope is that you're going to learn how to implement it. Now that means that we need to take all of the different sections that Cisco is going to require us to know, and what we're going to do is we're going to have to identify exactly what it is we're going to be talking about. And the best way that I've found to do that is to subdivide this entire class into modules. And what we've done is we have 6 modules. Now the first module that we're going to be dealing with is going to be dealing with data center protocols. Now data center protocols are going to include things that we've been using for years. Spanning tree protocol, port channels are 2 perfect examples. But in data center, we have to take into account that bandwidth is a major issue for us, and we really don't want a lot of arbitrary decisions being made about whether or not we can or cannot use specific links or groups of links. So spanning tree has been basically saving our bacon for years, but in data center it becomes a problematic issue because, again, data center is all about bandwidth. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at technologies that are going to allow us to overcome issues associated with the way we do things traditionally in, say, an enterprise configuration. Now also what we're going to do is we're going to make the effort to understand how these Nexus devices actually function at layer 3. Now you'll think back to your CCNA studies where we talked about layer 3 technologies. Those involve things like IP addressing, IPv4, IPv6. It involved things like routing protocols. Well, I have to tell you, data center is no different. We rely very heavily on routing protocols in order to be able to interconnect sites that are actually geographically isolated from one another. So I'm here in Virginia, I would use a layer 3 protocol over some type of internet service provider infrastructure to communicate to resources and assets that my organization may need to communicate to, say, in Europe or in South America. These are all things that we need to understand, but we're going to look at it from the perspective of data center. This is not routing and switching. So I'm not going to require you to be a hands-down expert in a protocol like OSPF, but I will expect you to know exactly how to use it and what it's going to do at its simplest form. And that's what we're going to be looking at when it comes to these layer 3 switching fundamentals that the Nexus devices actually bring us. Now, by interconnecting lots of sites together, we now create what we love to call in data center fabrics. But the problem is that we have lots and lots of information, especially if we operate with lots of individual organizations sharing the same infrastructure or the same framework, or to use that word again, fabric. And what becomes very important is we need to weigh the balance between efficiency and speed and being able to protect the client's content. And that's going to be what we're going to be talking about in Module 3 of this course, which is going to be infrastructure security. Now, again, there is an entire track devoted to security. We're not going to become security experts, but we do at least need to be able to speak intelligently to experts when we need to either understand or have advanced security features implemented. Another topic that is going to be very near and dear to our hearts in data center is going to be the concept of unified fabric. Now, unified fabric is unique to data center. Keep in mind that in data center we have three main areas of focus. We have the LAN, the local area network, which we share in common with our route switch brothers. We have the compute environment, which is almost completely ours because for the most part the enterprise routing and switching guys only really care about the connectivity. They're not overly concerned with the type and the classification of the data traveling across the infrastructure. But in data center we can't ignore that. In data center, we have made a conscious decision, and that decision is to unify our interconnecting mechanisms when and where possible. Now that's a big word. What does it translate to? What does it really mean? Well, unified fabric or unified wire allows me to use one physical media, usually Ethernet, to be able to communicate not only in the compute world, which is basically ours, and share common resources in the Ethernet world, which we share with routing and switching, but it also gives us the capability of being able to use that Ethernet technology to embrace the third silo of knowledge, and that's going to be storage area networking, which is similar but still quintessentially different than the idea of LAN networking or local area networking. We have storage area networks and we have local area networks, and by the end of this video series you're going to know not just the differences, you're going to be able to implement both. Now another component to this is going to be the idea of the impact that this unified wire has on our infrastructure, because now I'm going to be using Ethernet to connect to devices like Nexus switches that are going to have feet in both worlds, both the LAN world and the SAN world. And we're going to have to learn how to manipulate those. Again, at this particular juncture, I'm going to ask you to have a professional level of knowledge regarding this concept of storage in whatever shape, fashion, or form it takes. It could be native fiber channel, which is a technology that came out of the storage world. It could be fiber channel over Ethernet, which is going to be an amalgam of the fiber channel and the Ethernet technologies that we just previously spoke about melded into one solution. It could also be something like iSCSI, the ability to be able to access resources via IP addressing. So you can see that each of these different storage capabilities and their associated services may operate at different levels. And then lastly, what we're going to do is we're going to be required to take an analytical look at our infrastructure once it's built, and we need to be able to maintain it. Now I'm not talking necessarily about break fix, I'm talking about day-to-day requirements. So the issue is how do I upgrade devices in the least impactful, non-disruptive way possible? These are things that we're going to be discussing. We'll look at technologies like ISSU, in-service systems upgrade. We'll be looking at in-system service downgrades. We will be looking at any number of technologies that's going to allow us to be able to better maintain our infrastructure while staying current with regard to things like firmware, EPLD uploads, and things that you probably have no idea what they mean now, but I promise at the end of this video series, everything's going to make sense, and you're going to go back and you're going to look at this and you're going to say, oh, that's what Terry was talking about. So to keep things simple, like I said, we're subdividing this into 6 main topics. These are the topics, and I can't wait to dive into each and every one of them. We're going to begin in Module 1, which is going to be the discussion about data center protocols, a subject that is very near and dear to my heart. So, can't wait to hit that with you. I hope to see you in that video. And until then, I'm Terry Vinson, and I would like to thank you for learning data center with me.